Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of JXG Spotlight. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. He is holding as well as held many leadership roles in different spheres, in corporate, in sports, as well as in social circles. Today, my guest is none other than Group Managing Director, Group CEO of Janashakti Group, Mr. Ramesh Schaffter. Ramesh, you're the spotlight today.
Thank you, Gamika.
So today's discussion, Ramesh, my objective is to pick your brain and go through your experience to find out some inspiring thoughts for our next generation of leaders, to inspire the younger generation of leaders. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the discussion today and get some inspiration and insights from an expert. Ramesh, to start the conversation with, you're holding a responsible leadership role. But for our listeners, our followers, can you take us through your leadership journey? You're born into a business family. There's a lot of leadership around Mr. Shafter and the entire family. Can you take us through your leadership journey?
So one must understand the journey of my father, Chandra Shafter, because he was not born into a business family. He was a school teacher's son. And his journey has been inspirational not just to us, but to many. Because he quit his job at the age of 42 and starts off as a one-man band, essentially. A secretary and a delivery guy helping him, and that's how he started. And it has been a long journey. He hits 95 in April this year, and he has worked essentially all his life. And when you look at the insurance business, he founded Janashakti at the age of 65. Most people have retired 10 years prior. But even today, he's active, he's mentally active, he's alert, he's physically able and still moving. And that has inspired us. So we're not a business family. We came back 33 years ago, three brothers, and joined my father's business, which was not very large. And while he was dynamic, we were young, and so together we've essentially built this group. So the journey has not been easy. It's been long. It's been hard. Lots of challenges along the way, but yes, here's where we are. So no parachuting into a family business. And even within the group, I worked in various capacities before I got on the board of Janashakti Insurance, which is the flagship company. I got on the board in 2003 or 4, which was more than 10 years after I came back to Sri Lanka. And I would say worked my way up.
How did you adapt to, coming from overseas to the Sri Lankan context and to the business setup? How did you adapt?
So I lived and worked in England for a while. I lived there for about 6 years. I worked there for 3.5 years. And coming to Sri Lanka was definitely a culture shock. People have a sort of flexible time. They don't call you back. They don't return letters. They don't reply. The culture is very different. They're not punctual, which is a real problem when you come from the West. But I think we managed to adapt reasonably well and continue the journey. You've got to play the game in the grounds that you have. You can't always have the field the way you want.
Ramesh, this leads to my next question. Thinking from our new next generation of leadership, are leaders born? Are you born with leadership skills? Or what is your perspective on that and how has it evolved over the years?
So I really think that everyone has leadership traits, but no two leaders are the same. So if you take our own family, there's 4 of us and each one was very different in their leadership styles. And there's always strengths, there's always weaknesses. And the thing is to know yourself, to identify what you're good at, to identify perhaps your weaknesses, and to try to mitigate those. That's essential. Then, of course, there's things that you learn from others, because leadership is not something that can be taught. You learn by watching and learn by mentors and learn from coaches. And so it is that you catch these little traits, you adapt, you adopt, you change yourself, you copy certain others who've done it before you so that you can be a better leader. Leadership is something that anyone can develop. Perhaps someone ends up as better than someone else, but anybody should be willing to take leadership positions. Anybody should be willing to learn from others and grow. It's all about growth, personal growth.
There are many theories about leadership, Ramesh. I mean, people talk about in academics as well as in society as well. Anything that really inspired you in your leadership journey and something that you looked up to as a role model? Would you like to share that experience with us?
Several things. So, one thing is leadership is overcomplicated. Everyone wants to write a book on it. But it was Socrates, the Greek philosopher, perhaps in the 4th century BC, who identified 3 traits for leadership or 3 essentials for leadership. Logos, which is knowledge. You need knowledge in that field to actually be able to function in that field. Then he spoke about pathos, which is a passion for what you're doing. If you don't have that passion, you can't wake up in the morning. The third thing, which sometimes is lacking in this country, is ethos or ethics. You walk the talk, you be the person that you set out to be. And those 3 things coming together is almost a recipe for success. You put knowledge with passion and with strong ethics, you will succeed.
One of the questions that I have seen in interviewing many youngsters and different walks of life, finding your passion, I think that's a challenge. If you find the passion, I think you can go on that journey. What's your experience? I mean, you have handled multiple roles. You've been in sports, you've been in the corporate scenario, you have been in social circles as well, and social causes as well. How did you find your passion?
Not easy. I wanted to be a veterinary doctor as a child. I studied science to do that, and then my father convinced me to try accountancy. He said, do CIMA and then you can do whatever you like. After going through CIMA, I didn't want to do anything else. But I found that the area of finance, which I was not exposed to, and children really are not exposed to anything in the world. And sometimes you need, in our case, it was my father who helped us make that decision. But when I stepped into finance, I knew this was something I could play this game and took to it like a duck to water. I loved the stock market, started investing on the London Stock Exchange when I was 17. I've been in that area forever. It's never left me. I'm good with numbers. I took to accounting. I worked in an audit firm. I consider myself good at accounting and all things related to finance. And I love that. There are other things I love. And it's important that people don't necessarily have to have one passion. You can have more than one passion. And so, yes, like you said, I've had a sort of career in sports administration and such things because I love cricket and brought up with cricket, part of our life. And several things. So you find the spaces that you enjoy and try to eliminate. Of course, it's not always easy to just eliminate everything that you do not enjoy. There are things you need to do just to pay the bills. But if you can do that in a space where you really enjoy it, you don't work a day in your life. I wake up in the morning energetic, waiting to come to office because I'm enjoying every day.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. So essentially, Ramesh, that you try out different things as a youngster, and then you'll find your passion eventually. And those multiple things will also inspire you to find your passion as well. That's what you mentioned. Yeah.
True. Now, when my daughter did her O levels, I actually, at her request, arranged internships at 3 different types of businesses, as it were. One was an advertising agency because she tried her hand at copywriting. Another was an architectural firm where she tried her hand at art and sketching. And then at a legal division of an NGO. And she found that that is the area that she liked. And she ended up becoming a lawyer, a barrister. And so that's her passion. She discovered her passion. Sometimes you have to taste and see. And when you taste something, you realize this is what I like. And this is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. And so it is. People should be encouraged to do what they have a passion for. And that parents need to understand that. Sometimes parents, from birth, they want their child to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or accountant or whatever profession. It doesn't matter. But they set their mind on it for various reasons. And sometimes the individual does not have a heart for it. Then it becomes a burden.
Very inspiring, Ramesh. drives me into the next question. I mean, you're a person who handles multiple roles and a lot of responsibilities on your shoulder as a managing director, group CEO of a conglomerate, and also sitting in several boards. You also do leadership roles in some other institutions as well, in sports administration, etc., etc. Now, my next question is about work-life balance. Is there a work-life balance, or is it a myth? And how do you manage this? I'd like to draw your experience and pick your brain in terms of your own experience to share your thoughts with our followers.
So, work life balance, what is work life balance? Work life balance to me is fulfilling your obligations in one area of your life without neglecting your obligations in another area of your life. And so it's not about equal time on work and going home at a particular time and such things. I have worked even in my childhood, I've worked until 1 o'clock in the morning. There are times when I don't go to work because there's some other part of life that requires our time. And that's directing it in the right way is what work life balance is to me. So there are days even now when I put in long hours. There are days even now when I don't put in many hours because there's a need somewhere else. And sometimes, be it your spouse, be it your child, be it your parents, whatever, whoever needs your time, I have this simple phrase: if you're not there when I need you, I don't need you. So if my child is having exams, and this is something that I grew up with because my father was an absentee father. But when it came to exams, he was always there. He would journey with us to the exam center. He'd meet us at the lunch break. He'd make sure lunch is available for us. He'd smoothen those things so that the exam stress is minimized. And for me, that's work-life balance. He worked hard. But when we needed him, he was always there. And that's what's important. And that's what I encourage people to do. Sometimes people say, oh, I can't because I'm too busy. Too busy is a word or a phrase that's really not true. It's whether you are willing to make the sacrifices, whether you're willing to prioritize. It's a scarce resource, just like money. So you decide how you spend that scarce resource of time and what is your priority at this moment in time.
Absolutely. I think it's important that you prioritize what is important. And also, I think there is a notion work-life balance is like starting work at 8:30 and going off at 5, which is not the case. But sometimes you have to put in those extra hours. But what is more important at that time? Correct?
Absolutely. So depending on the priority. So last week, for example, my wife had a bereavement in the family, and so I cleared some of my diary and I spent time with her. We cancelled a holiday we were going on and such things because that was the need at that time. And that is how we balance things off. It's not, oh, I have my agenda and so I'm going ahead with my agenda. It is about being there for the people you care about and who need you at that time.
Ramesh, next question is also focused on the core objective of this discussion, which is to inspire the next generational leaders. I know that you carry this message through ICF, also Inspiring Change Foundation, but I like to re-emphasize and get your viewpoints in terms of giving a piece of advice to the next generation leaders. If you can sum up and give one piece of advice to the up and coming leaders, the youngsters in this country, which is the country needs right now, what would that advice be, Ramesh?
You asked the right question. I tell people don't just get a job, because any fool can get a job. Each and every person has it in them to transform the world around them. And if they set that as an objective, it doesn't matter which field, it doesn't matter which space geographically, you can and you will do it. Don't settle for mediocre. Everyone can be excellent. And if you set that as a goal for yourself, you will fail sometimes, but there's no shame in failing, no shame in falling down. There's shame if you don't get up again. And so you will find obstacles, you will have people who are laughing at you, you will have naysayers, but if you forge ahead, you will have success.
Absolutely, that's truly inspiring. Ramesh, when you mentioned about failure and getting up again, would you like to share some of your experience? I'm sure, your journey wasn't all hunky-dory and, easygoing. You would have had failures in your career. You would have had failures in, life. Would you like to share some experience to inspire our followers?
So what everyone sees today is group CEO, etc., but our lives were anything but rosy. So at the age of 3, I was essentially a displaced citizen. The whole family moved to India, foreign land. My mother was like a single mother because my father was working there part time, working here part time. And we grew up in that environment. So the first thing is absentee father, but I spoke about work life balance. So my father was always present at the right times. So when we had holidays, he would take us on a trip and we used to enjoy ourselves. Little did we realize that he's combining it with his work. So he'd park us in a hotel or park us in a bungalow, and we would be having an absolute ball. And he's out doing his insurance work and coming back and having meals with us and all of those things. So life was not easy at all. And India in the 70s was having a permanent drought in every way, not just rainfall. It had a no import policy. So life was tough. You didn't have any of the trimmings that Sri Lanka had after the open economy. You understand that India opened the economy about 15 years later. And they had this famous byline, be Indian, buy Indian, but what was Indian was not very good at that time. But perhaps it worked well for them because today they manufacture world-class cars and all of those things. Growing up, at first we didn't have a car, and then there were two models of cars to choose from, the Ambassador and the Fiat. And frugal life. 6 of us slept on the floor in one room. And that was a sort of childhood. Displaced again when in the early 80s or mid 80s we went to UK. People think, oh, they went to London, the streets are paved with gold. I can tell you it's anything but gold, and it's very tough. It's very tough. We were all quite young, studying, working part-time. Difficult time. But you enjoyed it, and it's made us who we are.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me sharing this, because I've heard this from you, sometimes you had to forego your lunch and work at,
No, not sometimes. Basically, we landed a job. My sister landed a job, and then next thing you know, 2 hours later, she calls us saying they need more people. So my brother and I go. Really well-paying job, £3.80, princely sum, when KFC was paying my older brother Prakash only £2.15. So this was like 50% more. And if you took a lunch break, you would lose £3.80. Who wants to lose £3.80? So we skipped lunch, worked through lunch, worked the whole day, just to get that extra £3.80. And yes, and I was 17 at the time.
Interesting. I think, those failures gives you lessons, and the hardships gives you lessons to inspire yourself and drive upwards. So Ramesh, I'm moving out from my formal questioning, and we have introduced a very interesting or exciting area for our discussion today, which is a rapid fire round. I'm going to put you on the spot. Maybe bowl a couple of bounces as well. To start with, since I know the siblings, each of the siblings have different traits and characteristics. If I put you on the spot and ask you, who is the best leader out of your siblings?
I'm the best looking. But the best leader, I think each one has their own strengths. Very different styles. In fact, polar opposites. And so it would be difficult to pick one because each one comes with a unique set of traits that actually support the cause. And Janashakti is what it is because all four work together. As I said earlier, my father was dynamic, so we were called young and he was dynamic. But coming together is what worked. And each one has very strong leadership skills, backed by those three attributes I spoke about: logos, pathos, and ethos.
Right. This leads to my next question. If you had a superpower as a leader, what would that be?
To sleep less. To survive on less sleep.
Less sleep.
Because time seems to be very tough, and I manage now on about 5 hours, but to sleep even less would give me more time to do my work.
There's another question which I'll back up later on, but the third question is, describe your leadership style in one word.
It was commander. And knowing that it is commander, every psychometric test makes me commander. In school, I was leader of the batch, etc., and those things perhaps came naturally. But when you become aware of these things, you become a little more consultative and try to, because part of the leadership journey is taking everyone along with you. It's not you marching ahead and expecting everyone to be following behind. So sometimes I'm faulted for being a little more consultative, but that's a purposeful thing. so that I don't override other people's opinions. Somewhere there between consultative and command. From time to time, we have to suspend the democracy as well.
I'm sure, yeah, that works well. The next question is, if you are to rank these famous leaders on the impact they made on the world and the community at large, how would you rank them? Number one, one being the best, and so on. I'll give you four names: Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, and Winston Churchill. How would you rank them based on the impact made on the society?
Very tough decision making there. I'd probably go with Gandhi because I grew up in India, and in India, you grow up on Gandhi. I can tell you everything about Gandhi. And the impact was certainly India gaining independence, and perhaps as a result, Sri Lanka gaining independence. So his impact is immeasurable, and India is perhaps what it is today because of Gandhi. Held on to secular principles, and India is a united India because of that. And Nelson Mandela, reformed man, transformed himself first. Remember, he was a terrorist, but came out and really stole the show as a great leader of peace. And that is a huge lesson for any of us. Nobody is so far gone that he can't transform himself. And then there's Abraham Lincoln, who took a strong position on slavery or against slavery. And America is what it is today, perhaps some distance to go, but what it is today because of Abraham Lincoln. And then, of course, Winston Churchill. We're speaking English thanks to him, others will be speaking German. But in terms of his general behaviors on various fronts, there are questions, but certainly we have to value the fact that he led the British and the Allies to World War II victory. And as I said, otherwise we'll be speaking in German.
Interesting, Ramesh, your take on that. Next one is more cricket-related question, our passion. Best Sri Lankan cricketer in your opinion?
No, it's not tough. It's Aravinda De Silva as far as I'm concerned. Statistics are not something you go by. You look at impact. In my opinion, and I watched many of these matches, I was fortunate. Highlight of my life was I travelled to Lahore for the 1996 World Cup final. Aravinda De Silva won that semi-final single-handedly. He won the final single-handedly. No Aravinda De Silva, no World Cup. There have been others who are good, but Aravinda was a natural talent. He played for Sri Lanka at 17. I remember listening to the radio when first ball he opened batting in a match when Sri Lanka was chasing something against India, and first ball he hit Kapil Dev for 6. He was 17 or 18 at the time. Unbelievable talent. Understand that Sri Lanka was a team then of amateurs. They were not a winning team, and yet he stood out. So Aravinda De Silva for me. If it was a bowler, it's Muthaiya Muralidharan, my dear friend, whom I've known since before he started playing cricket. And he's outstanding, 800 wickets, no one's going to touch that in a hurry. But if you just ask me, outstanding person who put Sri Lanka on the cricketing map?
Aravinda. Thank you, Ramesh. Two quick questions. Morning person or a night owl?
Both at the moment. My wife complains that I wake up too early. But we were brought up as morning people, whether we liked it or not. My mother would wake us up and we get screamed at if we don't get up. So it's sort of habitual now.
If you get a chance to talk to your younger self, say probably we rewind 10 years, what is the piece of advice you will give yourself?
Be a little more focused. I did enjoy life a lot. And so there's probably a good 10 years that I didn't do much. I sort of fielding at fine leg and watching the game rather than actually being active in the game. And that's changed in different spheres over the last 15 years. And now at the workplace, I hope that I can make an impact. And if I had a chance to go back 10 years, I would have been doing this 10 years ago, which I didn't. A bit lazy as well.
Interesting. Ramesh, last rapid fire question. If you are to do an autobiography, which of these following titles will suit you? So, for the ease of discussion, I have picked up 4. Chief Troublemaker, Confessions of a Corporate Rebel. That's one title. Meetings, Mistakes and Millions, The Real CEO Journey. Third one, How to Win, Lose and Still Get a Promotion. Final one, Boardroom Rebel, Breaking Rules, Building Empires.
So the fact is I am trying to write an autobiography if I can get around to it. I already have the chapter titles or some of them, and you're helping me with the title. What was that first one again?
First one is Chief Troublemaker.
I think that sounds a bit like me.
All right.
That sounds a bit like me.
Confessions of a Corporate Rebel.
Yes, because I think if I had to talk about one trait of mine, or what I try to do or strive to do, is to think out of the box, not to follow the sort of dull, boring style that everyone else has done. Think out of the box, find a way around a problem. Problem solving is something an accountant does, and that is something that I really enjoy. The challenge always is the thing that stimulates me.
Well, Ramesh, that leads into a conclusion of our discussion. So, heartfelt thank you and appreciation for you for taking time off your busy schedule and joining JXG Spotlight.
It's about work-life balance, Gamika. Thank you for having me.
Well, folks, that's a wrap. I'm sure it was an enriching discussion, which left us with many thoughts on our leadership journey. Among Ramesh's life experience, some things that struck on my head was about finding your passion, experiment things, and find your passion to move forward. Leaders are not born, but you catch leadership on the go with inspiration, with experience, and what is surrounding you. Leaders to this world, this community, this country is needed, and that's the thought that we are leaving the next generation leadership with. So, follow us for inspiring topics in the future. Until then, stronger together, stronger than ever, stay focused.